Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another thing where I talk about things. Today, I would like to talk about the Season 6 opener for My Little Pony. I was going to talk about El Santo, but then they released the opener for My Little Pony, and, you know, I don't know, I generally don't break down individual episodes, but not to rain on any parades, I don't think that came out so good. Man, some real rough stuff in the opener, a little bit, not a good start to the season, in my opinion. And not because of like emotional reasons. Like there are a lot of emotional reasons that some people were kind of irritated with the whole thing. Like the baby thing, a lot of people were upset with the baby as soon as it was announced because it has like the gigantic goose wings and like weird eyes that don't follow the convention that we established, previously when they had a baby episode. And that, there's like a lot of things you could say that's kind of incongruous and sort of rubs people the wrong way. But, like, mechanically, from a perspective of, like, how to write stories, they did a lot wrong, and it's, like, they did a lot of things you probably shouldn't do when you write. And it's weird because, I mean, like, you have an hour, right? It's a two-parter. You have an hour to establish your stuff. And they had sort of an A plot line, which was just an amalgamation of a bunch of, like, things that went wrong, some of which maybe shouldn't have gone wrong. And then there was a B line, and that was like Starlight Glimmer is there and she's reconciling with her old friend Sunburst. And then they wrap everything up by like just train wrecking the B line into the A line by saying like, oh well, Starburst had all the answers. And it's just like, oh, okay, like where was the arc for this? I don't know. We just find out that Starburst had all the answers, and Sunburst had all the answers. Sunburst just solves everything. Okay. But yeah, it's really weird. It had a lot of logical inconsistencies, but those, I don't know. Like, as the seasons have gone on, like, they have their hits and they have their misses, and on the misses, everyone kind of says, like, well, it's a kid's show, and, the other writers just do it professionally. It's not like a passionate, like, highly intellectual pursuit. Like, they're not really writing for adults, they're writing for 7-year-olds. So you expect that from time to time, but this season opener, I would say, even if you were writing for, like, kids, I don't think that it was really a very good episode. And the reason was because, as far as the kids go, like, it was super exposition heavy. And there's different ways that you can sort of write character dialogue. There's like, character-driven dialogue where two characters will sit down and they'll talk about, whatever's going on. So for brief synopsis, what this whole two-parter was about was that Twilight and friends get invited out to the Crystal Empire to see the new baby that Cadence and Shining Armor had, and the baby needs a christening, which they call a crystalling because they can't call it a christening. There's no Christ. But anyway, they have this crystalling, but that's not really the core of the episode. What's actually the core of the episode is that the baby is a destructive little hell beast, and it destroys the crystal heart, which then plunges the Crystal Empire into a snowstorm that will freeze everybody to death. And they find the solution, but then the baby burns the book that had the solution in it. So they can't save anyone, and the baby will basically kill the entire empire. This is kind of the problem, but they mix in these other elements with like the crystalling, and then like Luna and Celestia go off to try to stop the snowstorm, but they can't for some reason. And then, like, Starlight Glimmer is off doing her own thing, trying to reconcile with her boyfriend, her ex-friend, not her boyfriend, her ex-friend, Sunburst. But it turns out that Sunburst didn't really live up to her expectations. Like, he thought he was going to be a great wizard, but then he kind of didn't do so well in life, and now he's sort of a nobody, and Starlight Glimmer doesn't want to admit that she ran a cult, because then maybe Sunburst might think she's a little crazy. But then it's okay. She says, oh, I ran a cult. And Sunburst is like, oh, I don't have a job. And then they're like, gee, I guess we both have a lot that we didn't do right in life. And Sunburst says, yeah, I mean, like, running Jonestown is totally equivalent to just not having a job right now, to being in between jobs. So yeah, we're basically on even footing. And then they're like, oh, by the way, there's a problem with the crystalling and the snow and the baby and everything else. And Sunburst goes, oh, the snow and the baby, and you blew up the crystal heart? Oh, I have all the answers for that. Hang on, take me to the castle. And so Sunburst goes there, and he's like, yeah, here's the spell to fix the heart, and here's the spell to fix the baby, and here's the spell to make the snow go away. And if you have any more questions, let me know, because I have all the answers. And that was kind of the synopsis for it. That was the whole thing. But it's really weird. Like, the fact that they chose to do that, it's not just that they sort of train wrecked their plot lines together at the end, or that they had like that sort of out of nowhere solution for everything. It was also that like the whole first part of the episode was just like a ton of expository dialogue. Like I was actually tabbing out of the video like while it was going on, because I just got a little sick of hearing the ponies yap about like what is the Crystal Empire. So like Starburst is walking around and I don't know, it's weird. Like I can't. Probably partially because I was tabbing out, but also because it was just kind of boring. Like Starlight was walking around Twilight's castle, opening up a bunch of like the hallway was just full of identical doors, and she would open up a door and just be like, "Oh no, this isn't the room I wanted. Oh no, this isn't the room I wanted. Oh sorry, Spike, I interrupted you in the bathroom. Oh no, this isn't the room I wanted." And then she runs into Twilight, and she's like, "Oh, I found you finally. Hey, I'm not sure if I'm up to friendship stuff." And Twilight's like, "Yeah, no, you're fine. Allow me to explain why you're up for friendship stuff." And so they had I don't know, like I say, just exposition where they should have had character-driven dialogue, where, like, Starlight should have been... Because what you want to do when you have those character-to-character interactions is you don't want to have a character walk up and say, "Twilight, I am feeling this, and I am feeling this because of this, and I feel that because of this, then because of this." That's like expository. That's like I've been analyzing the situation, and I'm breaking things down, and I know exactly what I want to say, and so I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to lay this out as a logical argument, and if you want to refute my logical argument, feel free. This was the kind of the conversations that they had throughout the entire episode, throughout the entire two-parter. And so, yeah, she lays out this sort of like logical set of statements, and then Twilight turns around and gives her another logical set of statements. And then they get a letter from the Crystal Empire saying, "Hey, we're doing this crystalling thing." So then they go and they sit down, they sit around the table, and just, sitting around not doing anything, they have another expository dialogue session about, like, what is a crystalling? Like, what is going on with the baby? What are we doing? They say, "All right, Spike, explain what the crystalling is." And so Spike picks up this vase, and it's got some pictures on it that show, like, this is the crystalling. And he goes, "Yeah, the crystalling is when a pony does this, like a baby is born, and then you go to the crystal heart, and you give the crystal heart a rock, and the crystal heart is strengthened by the love of the parents and the baby, and the da-da-da." And it goes through another little session of expository dialogue. And then they get on a train, and they start driving to the Crystal Empire, and Starlight Glimmer sits down next to Twilight, and she's like, "Twilight, here's another logical statement about, like, I feel concerned that I won't want to meet Sunburst." And Twilight is like, "That is silly. You should not feel concerned that you should not feel concerned. Feeling concerned is the enemy. You should feel good." And like I say, it wasn't really like character-driven dialogue. It was all expository-driven dialogue, where the characters were explaining how they felt and why they felt it. When in reality, what you would do is you would express, or not in reality, in a good writing, what you would want to do is you would want to have the characters express themselves, like in an emotional way. Like Starlight Glimmer would just come and she'd be like really nervous, and she'd be like, and she did this a little bit, but then they mixed in like expository dialogue in it, and it just slowed it all down and made it clunky. But like Starlight Glimmer should have been coming up with a lot of excuses, at one point she goes, "Yeah, if you maybe want to skip that lesson, like that would be okay." And then Twilight is like, "No, logical reason not to skip the thing." But what it probably should have been is like Starlight Glimmer should have been like, "Oh, like I don't really mind skipping, like maybe do you want to go see ice cream? Like it's a big place. Like let's go tourist stuff. Let's do tourist stuff." And Twilight would be like, "No, you need to see your friend Sunburst." And like eventually, like Twilight would get firmer and firmer on the thing because Twilight is picking up on the fact that Starlight Glimmer doesn't want to see her friend. So instead of having Twilight respond with the exposition, or having like Starlight Glimmer give exposition, you would just have a character back and forth, where the one character is trying to divert from the situation without admitting why she wants to divert, and Twilight understanding why she wants to divert, and then not really hitting on it, because obviously we don't want to have this conversation, because people are like this sometimes we're indirect, and so just trying to have another conversation, like, no, I really want you to meet Sunburst, like, it's gonna be great, I hear he's great, he's got a fantastic butt, this is the whole reason you started a cult in the first place, isn't it? Because you missed your boyfriend, like, let's go see your stupid little boyfriend, and like it would have been much more character driven, more emotionally driven, less like I have these feelings and this is why, and more like I have these feelings and I don't want to admit that I have these feelings because it makes me feel kind of weak to admit that I have these feelings. Because that's the thing, like if you don't want to meet somebody, like for example, like I'm super afraid of planes, and I never want to get on a plane because I'm always worried the planes are gonna crash. But, like, I'll get on planes anyway, because I know that if I ever, like, called people up, like, if I had to go somewhere, like, on a plane, and I had to, like, explain to everyone, well, I couldn't do it because I was too afraid of the planes. Like, I would just feel like such an idiot, you know? It's like, planes are safe. Like, you should be able to get on a plane. And so, like, you get those kinds of things where it's like, oh, I'm, you know, nervous about being on the plane, but I know if I don't get on the plane, I won't get to my destination. If I don't get to my destination, then everyone's going to be sad. So, you know, that's life. That's how that works. And so it's the same thing. It's like, oh, I don't want to go see Sunburst, but I know that Twilight will be really disappointed if I don't see Sunburst. I really want to go, and I don't, you know, you have this, like, she doesn't really want to, doesn't come forward and just say, like, I don't want to see Sunburst. I don't know. Or she could have even expressed some of her doubts and just been like, what if he hates me? Like, what if it turns out that he thinks it's really bad to run Jonestown? Like, what if he's smarter than a lot of ponies and he's perceptive enough to know that I'm crazy? That kind of thing. So yeah, so they arrive in the Crystal Empire, and they go to meet the baby, and then they explain that there's never been an Alicorn baby before. And some people dislike that because there was a comic, I think, that explained that Celestia and Luna were both born Alicorns. But the comics are not canon if they're contradicted by the show. That's one thing that they have established, is the show can contradict the comics. The comics are canon until proven otherwise, basically is how that works. So the show turns around and goes, nobody has been born an Alicorn before. Apparently Celestia and Luna both did something. They sang a song, and they grew wings, because that's how you get to be an Alicorn. You sing a friendship song. And, yeah. So they explain that this is totally brand new. We've never seen a baby do this before. And then they come back to that thing where, like, babies are more powerful than their parents for some reason. And I was thinking about this, like, Princess McFlurry, as I've been liking to call her. Princess McFlurry uses her magic to, like, punch holes in the castle and stuff like that. Like, she is performing magic that looks like it would probably kill her parents. And it kind of bugged me that they established that as a thing, like when they said that unicorns have stronger magic than normal ponies, because I don't know why. Like on a natural selection level, I don't think that would be very possible. And this is when you're getting too analytical of the show. Like, you have to kind of let that stuff slide, because if you start to overthink it, I mean, it makes no logical or internal sense universe-wise. Like, it's just the thing they just say, like, is true. They're just like, yeah, this is true. And you're like, I can't really fathom that being true. But okay, show. Like, if you believe it's true, then it's true. If you say it's true, then it's true. But it's weird, because like, on an evolutionary level, if you imagine, like, children having the power to, you know, melt their parents' heads when they're babies, like, a lot of babies would kill their parents and then not be able to survive. And so, like, babies that were strong enough to kill their parents would die, and you wouldn't really pass on that genetic trait. So for babies to always be universally, like, dangerous is kind of, it's, like, super unlikely. And then they turn around and they do it with, like, an Alicorn, like a super baby. And not only can this baby, like, do all kinds of insane magical stuff, like, not only is she firing death rays, but she's also flying. Like, she's a strong enough flyer to carry a fully grown pony, just while flapping her wings. So they're doing this super baby thing, and she cries once. Like, the parents are really exhausted and really tired looking, but the baby, it's not because the baby is demanding. It's not because the baby is crying all the time and keeping them up at night. It's apparently because the baby is actively flying around the castle and just destroying everything, which is weird. Like, that's not really, again, that's not, it's not consistent with what you would expect of children. I mean, I guess that's what an Alicorn baby does, but I mean, normally the parents are tired just because the baby keeps them up, like, all hours of the night. You know, the baby cries at any given time. As soon as it's hungry, it cries. Like, baby has no perception of time. Baby needs baby things now. But no, this baby doesn't cry at all. This baby cries once. When they take her away from Pinky, the baby cries one time, a single solitary wail. And that one scream obliterates the Crystal Heart, which apparently is this major artifact that's keeping the entire civilization together. So then all the ponies are like, oh no, that's not good, right? That this baby destroyed the Crystal Heart. What does that mean? And so then they go into another round of expository dialogue where they explain that, like, well, you see, the Crystal Heart normally keeps storm clouds away from the city. And this was kind of funny, because then they had to go back and explain, like, why the Crystal Heart. Because, oh, well, if that's true, Twilight, how come the Crystal Heart not being here when we first arrived? Like, how come there weren't snowstorms when we first arrived and stuff? And they're like, oh, because the Crystal Heart was still here. It wasn't active, but it was here, and just being here makes the snow go away. So they're like, oh, okay, all right, that's a good, like, I guess that's a good retcon to create the tension for this episode. Sure. And so all the Alicorns are there, like Luna and Celestia and Twilight and everybody. So the snowstorm starts to come in, and Dash is like, all right, well, I'll just go fly up and I'll take care of that snowstorm. I'll gather up all those clouds because Pegasi are able to do that, and I'll push them away. And then they stop. And again, using exposition, not letting Dash try it and fail. Using exposition, they say, stop, Dash. You will not be able to push those clouds away, because if you try, you'll fail. So you need to just stay here and stand there, because if you move around too much, then that's like expensive. We have to animate that. So just stay where you are, and then what we'll do is we'll fly out and we'll fire laser beams at the snow, and that'll slow it down, but we won't be able to stop it. You know, us Alicorns do not have the power to stop a snowstorm. And this was a little bit funny, because after I was done watching the thing, I thought about it, and I was thinking, like, that's weird, like, that they can move heavenly bodies. Like, Celestia can move the sun, but she can't, like, push clouds away. But then it occurred to me that Celestia can move the sun. So if the problem is that it's too cold in the north, why doesn't she just take the sun and move it a little bit closer to the north? It would form things up, and you would, you know, then it would just be rain instead of a snowstorm, instead of a blizzard. I mean, that would be feasible, right? Like, that would have solved the problem, at least temporarily. I mean, long enough for them to evacuate the city, right? But she doesn't do that. They just fly up into the snow, and they're like, we can't stop the snowstorm. So Luna and Celestia, I guess, wind up doing all the legwork, and it's weirdly, like, ineffectual. Like, I can't really wrap my head around why specifically they're not able to stop the snowstorm, but they just say they can't. They use exposition. They tell the audience, like, we can't. They say, we won't be able to, but we'll buy you time. And I guess that's what they do, but I don't know why. I mean, if they couldn't stop it and they were that useless, I don't know why they even bothered either. Because, like, I don't know, it just seemed like it was, like, stretching for time. Like, why did you even bother? Like, the snowstorm could have, I mean, like, it takes a while for snow to pile up. I mean, everybody wouldn't have died immediately, right? Like, we would have had a couple of hours for the snow to, like, get a couple of feet on everyone, and like, the disaster would have been after the snow was piled up too high to move the trains, right? But you could use your magic to clear the railways. So the only way that we would die, theoretically, is if we brought the baby on the train and the baby blew up the train, which is where I assumed that they were going to go, because the baby was killing everyone. Like, I remember actually having a conversation, and there were some people who had a theory that the baby was actually a changeling and that it was actively trying to destroy the Crystal Empire. Because like I say, it was super weird. Like, the baby never cried except for that one time, and that was just enough to destroy the Crystal Heart. And then, like, later on, they go to the library, and they're like, let's find a spell that will fix the Crystal Heart. And they're talking about, like, how come we can't find a spell to fix the Crystal Heart? And they have this little expository session where they explain why they can't just find a spell. But then they do find a book. They find a book that has a spell in it, and they're like, here it is, I found it. And then the baby incinerates the book. Like, and at this point, I'm starting to think that, like, probably they should take the baby and they should just, like, exile it to someplace safe. Like, they should put it in a tower far, far away from civilization, because the baby is just going to kill everybody. Like, the baby is probably the most dangerous villain the show has ever seen, because if the baby succeeds in what it's been doing, like, if the baby successfully manages to snow in the Crystal Empire and kill everyone with cold, that baby will have the highest body count of any villain in My Little Pony so far. Like this is the most dangerous creature in the whole universe to date. I mean, like, T-Rex was super powerful, right? But T-Rex didn't want to kill everybody. He just wanted to rule the world. And same like Sombra just wanted to rule the world. I mean, he was going to enslave everybody, but he wasn't going to kill everyone all at once. The baby is just, like, killing the Crystal Empire. Like, she's just, everyone's going to die. So the baby incinerates the one and only spell that can restore the Crystal Heart. But then they all say, well, I don't know, Twilight, you flipped through the book, you scanned it over, can you remember the spell? And Twilight's like, gee, I guess that'll be kind of difficult, but yeah, off screen, I'll try to remember the spell. And so off screen, Twilight sits down and she, like, remembers the spell. And then they go down to the Crystal Heart and they cast the spell, and of course it doesn't work because, you know, it's not the end of the episode yet, they have to stretch for time still. So, yeah, the spell just doesn't work. Then meanwhile, you've got this B-plot with Starlight, Glimmer, and Sunburst. And so Starlight Glimmer goes to meet Sunburst, and this was also weird. Like, I don't know why, like, they have this blizzard thing, and the blizzard didn't actually do anything. They just kept talking about, well, when the blizzard comes, we're all going to be in trouble. Like, there was a lot of exposition, but at no point did the blizzard pose any real threat to anybody. So what I thought was going to happen is she was going to go see Sunburst, right? And then the snow was going to come down, and then it was going to snow them in, and it was going to be like, oh, I can't get out. And then they would have to like talk a bit and connect and be like, this is what happened, and this is kind of my story. But they wasted a lot of time, prior to this. And so instead of having any sort of like, again, character dialogue, they just sort of had a lot of expository dialogue. It was like, I am here because Twilight sent me. And then Sunburst was like, well, I am here because of, whatever reason. And he was sort of, like, you could tell that he wasn't really a wizard or whatever. He was just like, yeah, no, I studied to be a wizard. And then Starlight's like, well, okay, goodbye. And so she leaves. And then a little bit of stuff happens, and she realizes it's snowing. And so then she comes back to Sunburst. And she's like, hey, it's snowing. Did you see that it's snowing? And Sunburst is like, oh, snow? Wow, that's like weird. The Crystal Heart should be preventing the snow from coming into the Crystal Empire. And Starlight says, well, something must have happened to the Crystal Heart. Do you know what might have happened to the Crystal Heart? And then somewhere along the way, he explains that he wasn't really a wizard, and then she explains that she ran a cult. And then they both go, and then they both reconcile. They're like, oh, I see that we both didn't get what we wanted out of life. If only you'd been there, Sunburst. If only you'd been there, Starlight. Like, together we might have been okay. Because I remember when we were little, like, things were okay when we were together. Maybe that was because we were kids. And maybe we wouldn't have been very good adults even together. But I think that if we'd been together, things would have been much better. So then Sunburst explains that he actually knows quite a lot about all the things that are, all the conflicts of the plot. He knows a lot about all the conflicts of the plot. And then he goes to the castle and he goes, oh yeah, here's the actual spell you need to fix the heart. And here's the spell you need to make the baby stop killing everybody. Oh, and here's the spell you need to make the snow go away. And he just has all the answers. So like, that's it. There was no like rising tension or like obstacle. I mean, it was, you could argue that maybe the rising tension was like, oh, we're worried about the snow, but the snow never created a problem. Like, not really. So there wasn't really rising tension with the snow. There was just kind of like, they just kept saying that there was rising tension with the snow. And that's what I mean, is the whole thing was just very expository. It was driven by just expository dialogue. Like, everybody was saying the snow is dangerous. Like, they had a whole scene where like Dash and Applejack and all the other ponies stood outside and they were trying to explain to the crystal ponies. They're like, everyone, there is snow now. And all the ponies were like, no, there's not snow. That's dumb. Let's see the baby. And they were like, well, the baby is an alicorn. And they were like, well, that makes us want to see the baby even more. And then the ponies were like, no, there's snow. Snow is bad. And the ponies were like, we've seen snow. Snow is fine. There's no snow. And like, even though it was snowing on them, like the clouds were clearly gathering overhead, just all the ponies just refused to believe. Until finally Shining Armor comes out and he goes, everyone, there is actually snow. And everybody goes, oh no, snow! And they all act like it's a really big deal then, because Shining Armor acts like it's a big deal. And so then they panic for a little while. But again, the snow doesn't do anything. Like, the snow doesn't actually seem to be any source of peril. Like, it's not piling up. Like, it's not snowing anybody in. They don't go and show you that the railways are jammed because of the snow or anything like that. Like, they can't get them out of there. And even if they did, I mean, they could just use magic to clear them, I would assume. Unless they came up with some explanation why they couldn't. But, and I feel like that's what they would do. I feel like they would, the way that the writing was going in that episode, I feel like they would have just run to the train station and they would have said, oh no, the snow is piled up on the rails. And Celestia would turn around to everybody and she'd be like, maybe all of you think that we could clear this with our magic, but I regret to inform you that I can't. Because this snow is wild snow. And ponies have no power over snow this far north. And then you would just have to accept that because they said it, they said it was true, so that's what it was. So yeah, episode over. That was the thing. And there was another weird deal, is after the first parter, when the baby destroys the crystal heart, they play like this sort of quirky, like, music at the end of the credits, as though the baby had been really like quirky and lovable and they'd done a lot of stuff with it. But they hadn't, because they devoted most of that episode to exposition, and you saw kind of very little of the baby starting off. And the baby also didn't do anything cute or quirky. The baby just basically the baby destroyed the crystal heart, and that was like all it did. And it wasn't like, it wasn't very endearing, I thought. It was just, I don't know, yeah. So, yeah, season 6 opener. I'm not sure that they put their best writing into that. It was by the same guy who did the season 5 finale. And the season 5 finale was also weird, as they took like Starlight Glimmer, who opened really well in season 5. Like, I kind of like the opener for season 5. And they sort of closed the Starlight Glimmer thing like really poorly, because they were like, oh, let me explain to you why I'm sad. And then it was like, because my friend Sunburst moved. And I was like, that's why? Oh, okay. Weird. Yeah, same writer, though. Same writer who did that came and did the season 6 opener. I don't know. I think, personally, that season 6 opener is maybe the worst episode of My Little Pony that they've released so far. I mean, other people disagree. Like, they're like, well, I disliked such and such episode, or I dislike this and that. You get people who get upset because, like, some of them, have like their waifus or whatever, and they have an episode where their waifu was the antagonist, and they're like, oh, I hate that episode. My waifu would never be the antagonist, Like, I remember seeing a guy saying, like, no, the worst episode was the one where Spitfire was not very responsible. I hated that. That was terrible. Spitfire's my waifu. She would be a great pony. It's kind of like I don't know, but I don't know what to tell you. So some people get into that sort of thing, but I just felt like mechanically, like, writing skill-wise, like, just this was probably one of the worst episodes that they've released. Like, Magical Mystery Cure might have been really a huge letdown for everybody, but it was like, I don't know, they had songs in it, I guess, and there was, I don't know, it felt like you could kind of forgive it. It felt really rushed, and you could kind of say, like, all right, like, they were working with what they had, and I don't know. But this one just felt like they had it, like they had the time and they had the resources to do something, but the writing just wasn't any good. Like, it was just sort of not good writing, not good. And like I say, not good for kids either. Not really good on. It was just mechanically bad. Like, not good for kids, not good for adults. Not really a very good episode. So hopefully the stuff going forward will be a little bit better. But man, very weak opening, season 6. I don't know. The baby, I'm not really very fond of the baby either. On an emotional level, I don't really like the baby. Some people surprisingly were fond of Sunburst. I don't really know why. He didn't strike me. Again, there was not really a lot of characterization for anybody in those openers, in the opener. So I'm not sure what people find endearing about Sunburst. Like, he hasn't done anything. One person pointed out, they were like, yeah, I mean, I could see how he would appeal to a lot of people. Like, supposedly he was really smart and had a lot of potential as a kid, but sort of squandered that, and now he has no future. So for a lot of people here on the internet, that's totally your life story, and that's why you really relate to Sunburst. And then a bunch of people were like, all like posting like, that hit a little too close to home, and I wish you hadn't put it that way. So maybe there's that bit of appeal, but even if you look at it from that perspective, Sunburst didn't. I don't know. There wasn't very much characterization. There was a lot of exposition, and some people are weird. Like, it's hard to explain why that's bad, because some people, you're like, well, I mean, they just sort of exposited everything, and they're like, no, but they said that there was a conflict. They said the snow was bad, and it's like, look, I know they said that a blizzard would be really bad, but the blizzard didn't do anything. There was never a time when the ponies were actually in danger from the snow. So they can say it was bad all they want. I mean, they could say that there was a demon outside the whole time. I mean, that was the problem with the whole Sombra thing, wasn't it? Is they kept saying, like, yeah, Sombra's coming. Like, any minute now, Sombra's gonna be here. He's on his way. Like, Sombra. Like, when Sombra gets here, he's gonna gobble up all the ponies or something. Like, he's gonna do something bad. And he spent that entire, that whole, like, story was just like, Sombra never showed up, Sombra never did anything, Sombra never showed up, and then they solved the problem, and Sombra just went away, and there was, like, Sombra never really put anyone in any real danger. So he wasn't the obstacle. What the big threat of that episode was just the time limit, and the time limit was totally indiscernible. Like, you didn't get that sense of, like, oh, the clock is ticking. They didn't establish, like, here it's coming, like, gradually we're pacing the episode along with the encroaching thing, because that would take a lot of work. And the same thing goes with the storm cloud deal. Like, when they're just like, yeah, any minute now the storm cloud's gonna actually just do something bad, and there was never really a feel for that. Like, you didn't you weren't seeing like the sands of time running out. You weren't seeing those grains. It was just like, yeah, at some point, I mean, like maybe not today, like maybe tomorrow, like tonight might be kind of a light snowstorm, but tomorrow could be really heavy. Like whenever the weather picks up, that's when it's going to be bad. Like it could be a week from now, you know, I don't know. But like it's over time, it's going to be really bad for our crops and we might starve. You know, they like it's just sort of it was like a non-specific snowstorm. No, it's bad. It's bad. Everybody said it was bad. We exposited it was bad, and yeah, like I say, some people don't want to. They're just like, no, they said it was bad. It was bad. See, that was the thing. It was bad, and it was like, well, you can't. It's not good writing to just say a thing is bad. You have to like present it as a real obstacle. And if time is your obstacle, if time is your actual villain, then you have to give the viewer that sense of watching the hourglass run out. You can't just keep saying that sooner or later. You can't just keep saying that the hourglass is running out and then like never show the hourglass. You'd be like, oh yeah, any minute now we're gonna run out of sand. And like, oh, how long exactly? I don't know. Like, could be soon. So, yes, lots of things to learn about how not to write from watching this episode. I think, like, if you're an interesting aspiring writer, I think it would be a good idea to actually watch the season 6 opener and really break it down and really kind of understand like at parts that dragged a lot, like it had plenty of sections that really dragged. If you look at it, the sections that dragged the worst were sections where characters were saying why they did or did not want to do things, or like I got a little angry when Spike pulled out his chair and he's like, let me tell you about the time I saved Equestria, because it was like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we just chewing the fat? Like, we're just chewing the scenery. Like, can we just move on? Like, can we get to the core conflict of the thing? Like, because the core conflict clearly wasn't that Sunset Shimmer or Sunlight Glimmer was nervous. I mean, otherwise we would be devoting more time and energy to her nervousness. Like, probably, I don't know. I'm not sure where her real conflict was. Like, I guess I know that mechanically, again, in an expository way, she told us, the audience, that she was nervous and she didn't want to admit that she'd been a cult leader. But it didn't really feel like it was a conflict. Like, it was just kind of like, and when she came forward and she told him, it wasn't like there was a big release of tension. It was just kind of like, all right, so there you go, it's out there. And then he was like, oh, okay, so it's out there, it's good. You know, all right, we established that, we're done with the B plot, we're all wrapped up, let's move on. So yeah, stuff like that. There's a lot you could learn if you're an aspiring writing on what not to do from watching these episodes. Just very poor, very sad, very sad. People worry sometimes that I don't like this show, and genuinely I do. Like people sometimes say this, like, Greg, do you really hate Fluttershy? And it's like, no, actually I really like Fluttershy. I like writing that sad character. I like voice acting that sad character. Like, I like to sit hunched over my desk while I rub my hands awkwardly and mumble into the microphone and all that. I'd like to make Fluttershy miserable. You know, I like the show. I understand that it never was perfect. It's lost its way to some degree, but yeah, this was a pretty bad episode. I don't have a lot of positive feelings about it. But yeah, anyway, I suppose that's about all I can say about it. You know what it is. We'll see what the rest of season 6 shapes up like. But anyway, though, thanks for joining me, everybody. I will catch you all next time.